I absolutely loved Uncharted 4 and the conclusion to Nathan Drake's story when it was first released back on PS4 in 2016. And yet I haven't been able to bring myself to replay it on PS5 since the 30 FPS stopped me dead in my tracks. Yeah, I've been a bit spoiled. But now we finally have the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection for PlayStation 5, which packs in both Uncharted 4 as well as the shorter spin-off Lost Legacy. And it brings with it some visual and performance upgrades, including the much important 60 FPS support. Unfortunately, it's missing my beloved multiplayer mode. As such, we're mostly going to be focusing on the technical aspects in this review, including an in-depth look at the 3 graphical modes offered, as well as a comparison between them. And after that, we'll have a spoiler-free review of the games themselves near the end of the video. With all that being said, are these the definitive versions of the games, and are they worth picking up if you have already played them on PlayStation 4? Well, that's what I'm here to answer in GameXplain's review of the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection on PS5. The big new addition in the Legacy of Thieves collection are the 3 different display modes. Fidelity, which runs at 4K 30fps and it looks phenomenal. Performance mode running at 1440p upscaled to 4K at 60fps, which was my preference. And then we have the most surprising mode being Performance Plus, which outputs in 1080p at 120fps if your display supports it. After trying all 3 settings, I eventually settled on Performance mode because it had a nice balance of great performance while not compromising on the visuals all too much. For a while I played on Performance Plus, but I noticed some rough edges and the odd frame drop in the open areas, so this mode wasn't for me. Fidelity ended up being my least used mode because the PS5 truly has ruined me when it comes to tolerating 30fps. Naughty Dog have long been masters of creating visual masterpieces, and both Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy looked incredible on the PS4, so there's no wonder that they amaze even more with the extra horsepower of the PS5. Whether I was swimming through the murky water of Drake's boring day-to-day life in Uncharted 4, or exploring the luscious jungles of Lost Legacy, I just had to stop at times to take it all in. Frequently. The crystal clear clarity of Fidelity Mode was amazing to witness, and while I always choose performance over visuals, I couldn't blame anyone for wanting to experience a game like this. And the 30fps frame rate appeared to be rock solid even during the high octane encounters, with bullets whizzing past my head and explosions happening all around me. As far as 30fps modes go, this is as smooth as they come, but of course there are much smoother options available. This is why my preferred mode was Performance, which runs at a smooth 60fps upscaled to 4K from 1440p, and it looks stunning thanks to the still impressive resolution that runs at double the frame rate. And it was an absolute no-brainer for me. While I struggled with the combat at times in Fidelity Mode due to the 30fps, the extra responsiveness of Performance Mode made fighting these enemies a breeze, even on hard, as I plan on getting the platinum in both of these games. Although the image is noticeably less sharp than Fidelity, the trade-off for 60fps is well worth it in my eye. Especially since the loss in clarity is nearly impossible to notice during combat. But during the slower moments, you can definitely notice a difference in the sharpness of distant objects and shadows. The biggest difference might actually be the quality of the water. As you change between the modes, it's easy to see the water becoming increasingly worse in quality. Once again, it was never enough to hinder my experience, but it's something to note. This is the 60fps mode I wish we had gotten on the PS4 Pro, as it was the only thing holding a Thief's End back. So I am over the moon with how this performs, and it's not even the smoothest option available. Enter Performance Plus, which runs at a ridiculous 120 frames per second, which came as a total surprise to me. Because while we've come to expect 120fps modes for multiplayer shooters, I never thought I would see it in a single player PlayStation game. And sadly, while my monitor supports up to 144Hz, YouTube does not, so I can't actually show you how incredibly smooth it is. But trust me when I say climbing in 120fps is something I never thought I would want, but it feels amazing and so incredibly responsive. Switching from Fidelity to Performance Plus while climbing or jumping around makes it feel like Nathan or Chloe gained 100 pounds, and combat feels sluggish by comparison. But it comes at a heavy price, because while I said earlier that I thought I would always opt for smoother gameplay over graphics, Performance Plus mode has changed my mind, because the image quality takes a serious hit, looking significantly more blurry, especially with the landscapes off in the distance. It's hard to notice during hectic combat encounters, but it's quite apparent everywhere else. Look, sacrifices have to be made, and I'm delighted that the devs gave the option for 120fps, but the change in image quality between Performance and Performance Plus is too much for me, so I stuck to Performance mode, which strikes a much better balance. That brings me to one final point about the port itself. Where is the multiplayer mode? Yes, I'm one of them weirdos who love the Uncharted multiplayer. Going from the beta of Uncharted 2 multiplayer in 2009 to the frustrating online pass days of Uncharted 3, all the way to my dearly beloved PvP on Uncharted 4. Sony is sorely missing their multiplayer shooter, so why not release this while we wait for the Last of Us factions? I just want to be able to punch Harry Flynn on the face in 120fps. Is that too much to ask? Now that small rant is over, here is one final comparison between the three modes. YouTube only supports up to 60 FPS, so it will be hard to show you the true benefit of Performance Plus, but which mode will you be playing when the game launches? I went ahead and slowed each clip down by 50% to give a better idea of the difference in frame rates. As you can see, Performance Plus is still remarkably smooth even at half speed and really helps demonstrate the difference over the normal fidelity in particular. Now that we've covered the technical side of things, how are the games themselves? Well, let me put it this way, if you haven't played Uncharted 4 yet, what are you doing? Just go play it. If you like linear cinematic experience with great acting and an endearing cast of characters, then you're in for a treat. Uncharted 4 is the finale of Nathan Drake's adventuring days. From the get-go, the game is more real and mature than the previous. The original trilogy had some high stakes, but the games were more focused on the adventure rather than the characters' real lives. Uncharted 4 starts with Drake in a dilemma. He isn't happy with his day-to-day life and he's torn between the thrills of his old adventures and the mundanity of his current life. Immediately, the game has a different feel to the happy-go-lucky adventure of the previous trilogy and Golden Abyss. I can't forget to give Bend and Avita some love. The combat is wildly improved too. The previous games were bog standard third-person cover-based shooters with a handful of weapons and a few cool set pieces and plenty of quippy dialogue. For me, everything on the gameplay front is improved. Drake now mysteriously has a grappling hook that he can use to swing from fixed points. This makes for a more kinetic combat experience. Encounters are more open than before too, clearly picking up a few points from the design of The Last of Us, making for a more engaging combat loop. You can choose to go stealthily or running guns blazing. Both are as viable as each other, but my tactic was go in silent until I inevitably got caught, then start swinging from ropes, jumping on people from the sky and stealing their gun. Still to this day, that will never get old. Naughty Dog knocked it out of the park with this great combat system, but it's almost like they forgot to implement loads of combat encounters. In the previous trilogy, a good chunk of your time was spent fighting hundreds of enemies across a wide variety of locations. However, Uncharted 4 places more emphasis on exploration and cutscenes than the previous titles. I would say the original trilogy had a 60-40 split of combat to non-combat, whereas Uncharted 4 has a 40-60 split combat to non-combat. While I personally enjoyed the story and dialogue, it seems strange that Naughty Dog created, honestly, one of, if not the best cover-based third-person shooter combat systems, and decided to have very little of it. And this leads me on to the replayability. Of course, you have the crushing mode playthrough and finding all the collectibles, but the emphasis on narrative made parts of this experience a bit slow. I already knew what was going to happen, so this is something to keep in mind if you've already beaten the games before. I was 9 when I first played Uncharted 1. Yes, I was probably too young, but my love for these characters is unmeasurable. Drake's one-liners,
Mierda. Hey, give me a call when you're tall enough to ride the rides.
Chloe's sarcastic attitude,
You need the guy.
Oh? And what'll that cost me?
Sully, well, being Sully.
Yeah, well, unless you can find me an escalator, I think I'll pass.
I grew up with these characters and they're at their very best in Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy. The acting and voice performances are some of the most impressive around. They came across as cheesy in the PS3 games, but the added maturity of the narrative in 4 and Lost Legacy only made me love the characters even more. At the end of the day, you still have to suspend your disbelief at times, perhaps a lot of the time, but if you can get around that, you're in for extremely enjoyable experiences. As for Lost Legacy, I somehow missed this originally. I'd previously never played this game, only seen it at a friend's house. It was in my backlog, but I just never got around to it. And it surprised me. You play as Chloe Fraser, one of the strongest characters from Uncharted 2, and they did an amazing job at fleshing her character out in Lost Legacy. You team up with Nadine Ross, one of the bad guys from Uncharted 4, and I love seeing Chloe and Nadine's relationship grow throughout the game. The game is much shorter than any mainline entry in the series, so I think there were a few shortcomings in the narrative. While I won't spoil anything specifically, certain things are resolved too quickly for my liking. In some instances, something happens to the characters, and then it's all forgotten in the next cutscene. The game is still a linear romp with kinetic combat and amazing set pieces. However, in A Thieves End and Lost Legacy, there are a few open areas where you're given a car and set free to roam. I enjoyed these sections, and it was mostly for one reason. The sheer amount of small conversations between characters while exploring was great. Just like God of War 2018, the characters would chat amongst themselves while exploring, fleshing out their relationship and backstory. It's such an effective method of storytelling, and I'm glad the open areas allow for it to be more common. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection is the definitive way to experience these two fantastic games. And it's an absolute no-brainer for those who missed it originally. Although, you should start with the Nathan Drake collection if you're new to the series, as much of the narrative will be lost on you if you have no prior experience with the characters. Uncharted 4 is one of the best cinematic gaming experiences I have ever had the pleasure to play, and the addition of Lost Legacy only sweetens the deal. But if you've already played the games on PlayStation 4, then it is a harder sell. I was waiting to replay these games on 60 FPS, so I would have picked this up with or without this review, but they're still the exact same games with the same levels, cutscenes and dialogue, so replaying them can feel quite slow in certain parts when you know what to expect. I already loved Uncharted 4 when I played it back in 2016, and with the boosted graphics and performance and Lost Legacy thrown in, I love the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection on PS5. I am missing the multiplayer mode, but not enough to drop the score. But there we have GameXplain's review for the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection on PS5. Let me know what you think of this collection in the comments down below. Check out the videos on the right if you want more great content. I really appreciate your time. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all on the next video.